Like, and it wasn't that my parents never said you are going to take Allison, like this is your responsibility, just like you were saying that they didn't do that either. Um, but it was just I'm so connected and protective of her that it was almost just a given. Um, I will say after, like I said, in that sixth grade camp, when I got the hives, I think we all sort of realized that, um, I was so sort of enmeshed, as they say, with my sister. So I did end up, but I had a lot of freedom growing up. Like I had time with my friends, I did sports, I was on the high school newspaper. So my parents always, we grew up with au pairs. So basically, like a nanny that lived with us and primarily to take care of my sister because my parents worked full time. Then my mom was going to law school. So we always had someone, usually a young woman. We had a lot of people from Sweden. Um, that sort of helped with her so that my brother and I weren't the ones that had to be the caretakers.
Hello, and welcome to Unoverwhelmed Emotional Fitness. My name is Elvia Diaz, and I am a proud mother and advocate and a coach for families of children with autism or neurodiversity. In this channel, we share reflections, tools, and real-life stories that bring hope, emotional strength, and faith on this neurodiversity journey. My goal is to help parents and caregivers feel less overwhelmed and more empowered as we walk this path together. Thank you for being here, and let's take a listen. Hello, everybody. Today, I have a very, very important guest, a very dear person. Her name is Heather Roberts, and she and I work together at San Diego State University, and we have learned that we have many special connections. And one of them is that she is a sister of someone with a disability. And I asked her if she could come and share what it's like to be part of the family with a disability, and most importantly, how she has navigated becoming a caregiver of her sister with intellectual disabilities, and how she has navigated her own life growing up. Because sometimes in the families, we just focus on the person with disability, but we have to realize that we say that it's a blessing in disguise, but it is very, very hard for many people in the family to actually navigate how to deal with this financially, emotionally, physically. And she is going to share with us how she and her family have made this very important support system and how she has managed to be the caregiver with all the different aspects that she has to juggle in her own life, because she even takes time to study. She's a student and a master's for a social worker. So I'm going to invite you to listen, stay at the end, and we will share a very, very important part. Okay, so thank you for being here, and take a listen, because you're going to really understand what it's like to grow up in a family with disability. So stay with us. Heather, thank you so much for being here. This is such a topic that I'm so excited talking about. Being a sibling of someone with disability, it's a topic that often people don't talk about. It's like things that are behind people's head, and we just focus, and it's a very, very important topic. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the opportunity to talk about the sibling experience and the sibling perspective.
I appreciate that. And before we start, I mean, you are a very accomplished woman. You are a juggler, like many of us are. But I think that at some point you have too many balls. I like the analogy that they say that when we have many balls in the air, some of them are made of crystal, and
Mm.
those are the ones that we cannot let drop, especially family. Maybe your school, maybe your work, those things will bounce back. But, they're crystal balls. So I know that you juggle many, many things. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you have become such a juggler?
Oh, sure. So, yeah, it's sometimes I get feedback from friends and family who and my therapist who laugh about all the things that I'm juggling all the time. Um, well, I'm a wife. I've been married for 25 years. I'm a mother. I have three daughters that are all, grown now. My oldest two are in their early 30s and sort of engaged, and one of them has a baby. Well, not a baby, a toddler. So I have those two. And then my sweet baby just turned 24. She's still living at home and she's about to graduate from college. I am a student myself. I am in a graduate program right now at San Diego State University. I'm getting my master's in social work very slowly. I'm in the 4-year program. So that helps me juggle things is that I can do these part-time things. Um, I am a music teacher. I have been teaching music classes for small children and their families for about 20 years. And like babies, little bitty babies up to 5 years old. Um, I teach puberty seminars for fourth and fifth grade girls. So, 9 to 11-year-olds and their mothers, where we gather in someone's home and we talk about going through puberty and adolescence and the body changes and the emotional changes. Um, I feel like there's something else on my list that I just can't even think of right now. And then, of course, I am a sister. I have two siblings. My brother, I'm the oldest of three. My brother's the baby, but he's only like 3.5 years younger than I am. And he lives on the other side of the country. He lives in Florida. But we're very close. We have a wonderful relationship, but he's has his family out there. He has a son that has Down syndrome, so he has someone with disability within his family now. And then my sister Allison, is in between us, and she was born with severe developmental and intellectual disabilities. And as she's aging, we're both in our 50s now, which is kind of crazy. Her body is aging faster than a typical person, so she's acquired more physical disabilities, which require more care and support. Um, so yeah, all of those things, juggling all of that all the time.
And if I understand correctly, you're also helping your parents, your
Oh
aging
yeah,
parents.
yeah, yes. Oh, and I also forgot how we know each other. I also, I'm like, I knew there was something else I'm missing. I'm a graduate assistant. I have a job, another part-time job working with the Social Policy Institute at San Diego State University. And yes, my parents are aging. They're both 77. So is my stepmom. And so all of them, as they're aging, have different health concerns. Um, they're all very independent in general, so I'm not doing that much caretaking for them except when things happen. Um, but knowing that someone the other day said, "Oh, your mom's almost 80," and I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, I guess 77 is getting close to that." So yeah, aging, disability, all of that.
So, what do you do at 2 o'clock in the morning?
I know. Usually, I will say now I am usually asleep. There were many years where I did not, I had insomnia and anxiety and wasn't getting adequate sleep. But I will say that in the past few years, that has um, reconciled itself. So at least I do
That,
get good sleep. Yeah, huge.
that is wonderful. Yes. Well, from all those hats, I'd like you to put on right now just your sister hat.
Hmm.
Okay, so because I know there's so many, just because some of those balls that you're juggling. Many of them are crystal, and it's very, very
Yeah.
hard to make sure that they don't fall. But
Hmm.
congratulations for having such an energy. And especially, I mean, I want to thank you because ever since I've known you, it's just your caring and your passion and it's very, very contagious. I mean, and the enthusiasm that you bring to the energy when we have shared the floor, it is
Hmm.
very, very compelling. And at some point, I think that it is like a calling that
Hmm.
you have lifted, and that power of vulnerability and that reliability that we can relate to, people can
Hmm.
relate to you as a sister. It is
Hmm.
very, very powerful, and that's the one I want to focus on today. But before I do that, I don't know if you know this, but when I was little, there was a point that I was little, and I still remember. That's important.
Yeah. Hmm.
I was about 8 years old, and I had a complication with my with an infection with my tonsils. But unfortunately, there was some medical negligence, and my mother was told that she was exaggerating, that I was okay. But the infection ended up affecting my my nervous system, and my fine psychomotor skills. So throughout from 8 years old until 15 years old, I needed very, very important special attention. There was a point, I mean, I could not feed myself. I had to be
Hmm.
fed, or because I mean, I could not control the spoon to my mouth.
Hmm.
I could not sit still. I needed to sleep on a crib because I could not stop moving. It was like having Parkinson in a way. So it
Okay.
was very, very tiring.
Hmm.
So even sleeping, I would be moving and I would fall off the bed. So I had to sleep on a crib, 8 year old
Wow.
sleep sleeping in a crib. So it was very, very stressful. And I am number 8 out of 9.
Oh my
so,
gosh.
so it's
Wow.
like my mother had a lot on her plate herself. And out of these 9, obviously my two sisters, there's an older one and a younger one, who had to deal with me, because I could not go outside and play like most normal people do. And so there I am just so grateful to them because even though at school I got bullied a lot, and they were always there just to defend me, even if it was pushing people around so that they wouldn't know.
Hmm.
But I know in my, how my condition at some point took away attention from my parents. So,
Hmm.
and still today, they're very loving, and I mean, I love them to tears. But but at some point, there's like a guilt feeling, like, I robbed them from so many opportunities because I was the one to go travel with my parents. I mean, I got the best of it because I got to be with my parents, but I know they didn't. And they have never, I mean, I sometimes, now, my thanks to my parents and my siblings, that there was so much love in my family, that I think that that's what got me through. And even though the doctor said that I was not going to be able to study, that I shouldn't, that they shouldn't push me too much, because if I made it to middle school,
Hmm.
it would be a miracle. Well, the miracle was extended to a master's degree in
Yeah.
University of London, but that's all really because of the support of my family, who helped me believe in myself. So that is how important the family system can be for
Mm.
someone who could have just believed it and say, oh, well, the doctor said I'm not going to support, I'm not, because of course I tried it, and I tried to
Hmm.
put the guilt trip on me, maybe be the victim, and try to manipulate,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
it's fun.
Hmm.
But but I know that I was everything that I am today. I then that I am proud of is because of my family. So that's
Mm,
why I feel that is so important that you, as a sibling, can share what is like on the other side. So I have
yeah.
some questions for you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I did not know that about your background, and I'm angry at the doctors that didn't listen to your mom. As someone who had 9 children and is an expert in parenting, that they didn't listen to her when she knew something was wrong is infuriating. But
Yes,
I'm
and
glad.
at some point I wanted to rub my MA degree into his face, but my mother didn't allow me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I have some questions for you that I have prepared, and just to kind of help other people, the civilian point of view, because I know now, as a mother of a child, I have three special kids, of course, but the one that is growing, I like to say, with special challenges.
Yeah.
The youngest one with autism. So I know that it has been difficult for my daughters also to deal with him, and that he was the one who needed attention. So at some point, one of my daughters even said, I wish I was the one who had autism because, you give all the attention to him. So it's very difficult also for the parents, how to balance that. So if I may, I need to ask you some questions. May I?
Of course. Of course.
Okay, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Just
What
throw
was
it.
it like to grow up with a sister with intellectual disability?
Hmm. I, uh, I'm most of the time, I mean, it makes me smile because I just adore my sister so much. She is, sometimes people would describe her as being nonverbal, but I don't like that descriptor because she is very verbal. She makes a lot of sounds and she does try to say words, but just because of the mechanics of her mouth, she isn't able to say form words where a lot of people could understand. But we have a lot of communication, whether it be through the vocalizations of things she's trying to tell me that I know. We sort of know her Allison language in our family. Same with like her sign language. We joke that she uses she speaks sign language with an accent because again her dexterity isn't, like someone that knows sign language uh, might not understand the signs she's making because she does them her own way. Um, but we laugh a lot. We laugh a lot. But it's interesting when you were commenting on sort of the energy I bring to different places. I think so much of that comes from being my sister's sister because one of the ways my thing I always wanted her to laugh. So I was I'm very animated, I'm very silly. We bond over music a lot, so there's a lot of singing and dancing and so that's sort of what I remember. She was always included in all of our family things. I remember when I was growing up, one of our like very close family friends. In that family, there was an aunt that had severe developmental disabilities. And when the family would get together, that sister, they would just put her in a back room in front of the TV, and then everyone else would sort of. And I always thought that, and I always thought that was so strange, and like I didn't understand why it was because she was like too loud or she was too distracting or too disturbing that like she couldn't be in with everybody else. And that was such a strong contrast to the way we were with my sister, where she just did everything with us. So that was a big lesson I learned very young about how different families handle their loved ones with disabilities in different ways. Um, so there was that, and I definitely remember, you know, unfortunately, the R word, retarded, is making a comeback these days, and that was the description for her. Like that was her medical description when she was born in the 70s. Now they've changed it, but I remember when people would use that word derogatorily in school, like I would get really tense and, um, just be like, you shouldn't say that. Like, you know, my sister's retarded and that's a real thing anyway. So, there was this early sense of advocating for her. Um, you, the whole needing to protect my sister, that was very prevalent in just like my psychology and my psyche. I was a big worrier about my sister for years. I mean, still am, but to the point where when I was young, here in San Diego in sixth grade, all public school kids go to sixth grade camp. And when I was in sixth grade and I went to sixth grade camp, I was so worried that the person that was supposed to, because I would always meet my sister's bus when she came home from school. And since I wasn't there, someone else was going to do it. And I was so anxious that that person wasn't going to be there on time and Allison was going to be stuck on this bus and just lost in the city. And I broke out in hives, head to toe, horrible. And the only time in my entire life, like I had such panic and anxiety, and I often had very disturbing dreams about my sister getting hurt or kidnapped. Like, so there was lots of joy growing up with her, but also this sense that like she is an incredibly vulnerable person. So we always need to be protecting her. So there was that sort of burden also.
Yes. It is said that those of us for caregivers with someone with such a need, even though they don't speak, they communicate. But still, the stress level that many of us deal with is very similar to a soldier in the battlefield. And I mean, because you never know what's going to happen and you cannot really disconnect. So yes, it is very, very stressful. And of course, so your relationship is great. And I'm sure your parents had to do with that. But then there is people around you, how do people often see and understand about your family? Sometimes our families are, let's just say that with my son's condition, I stopped being invited to many parties and things that, because, or I didn't feel comfortable going because I didn't like the way my son was treated. So, I mean, there were comments or they were, they just opinions, and sometimes you just don't want to deal with it. So you kind of isolate yourself. The family becomes a little bit more isolated out of our own decision, but also, people just plainly said, like, they just do things. How about yours? It was how was your family treated?
I know, again, these weren't conversations I was aware of when I was little, but as I've become an adult, my mom, would tell me that there were family members that when my sister was born, and even some of her doctors were encouraging my mom to put my sister in an institution. Like, this is going to be too much work for you. It's going to be too hard. It's going to be a burden on your family. It's better off just putting her in a home somewhere. And my mom was like, absolutely not. So, there was that. And there were some times where, there's certain things that we don't do. Like I said, my sister and I love music. We love music, and I have taken her to some concerts. And we used to take her to like music. I remember going to see The Lion King with her, going to see other Broadway, musicals that come through town. But when I do that, when I go out and about with her in the community, I just have to be prepared for people to stare or make, do the like, what is that? Like, there's like some irritation until they realize, usually once they realize, okay, this is someone with disabilities, then they soften. But I think that, there's been other times where my mom and I, I'm like, oh, I saw this play coming that I think Allison would really like. And my mom is like, she's going to be a pain. She's going to be a total pain if we try to do that. She's going to scream. She's going to make a scene. And so we don't go. Whereas I'm kind of like, yeah, she's going to make a scene when we get there because she doesn't like walking downstairs, but I'm like, I mean, when we went to that Lion King, I ended up carrying her down the stairs like a piggyback, where I had her on my back to get her because she was just having a freak out. But then once we're sitting, then she's fine. And so I'm like, you know what? This is, you know, it's a fine balance, right? Because when you go to these sort of like public performances, they're for everybody and you don't want to be disruptive. But at the same time, it's not fair that because she makes sounds she can't control, that she shouldn't be allowed to participate in something that she loves. So there's this constant balancing of that, trying to figure out, you know, when and how we can participate in community and civic, just things that go on in our communities and go on in our city, while also being respectful of other people. I mean, I have my own, I think that more people should do that because then more people would be more comfortable with people with disabilities. Like you said, I think that there's sometimes this sort of self-segregation where people isolate, and then we end up with a society where people with disabilities that might look different or sound different or move differently are kept out of view, out of sight, and then we don't have enough people that work in programs to support people like this. Trying to get people to support policies to support people with disabilities isn't a top priority. So anyways, I think it's important to have people. That's just another part of the diversity that makes a society rich.
Right. And I mean, they bring so much, and they're important part, and there's so many, like to call collateral beauties, because they bring the best of people. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But the roles kind of evolve, and I remember vividly that even though my brothers and sisters, they're all very protective of me, all of them, I know that my mother never ever imposed me on any of them. I mean, they did not say like, no, you cannot go because you have to watch Elvia. No, because never. And that, I mean, I learned that, and I told my daughters, I said, is my son, he's my responsibility. And I became a divorced, so even, a bigger burden rather. And of course, they were overprotective at some point, or I was being overprotected. So I said, it's my son, my decisions. And if you want to be part of his life, you're more than welcome. And whatever you want to help, I'm happy, but he's not your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it was said, this is how things are. And they are wonderful. They're so good to him. And, they play around with him. And I'm glad they don't remember, because when they were growing up, I mean, I remember my son just out of nothing going and pulling down their heads and like that, or pulling their hair. And he would just pick a fight, they were like, I would just, my mother would never go in the middle to try to solve things. She always let us solve our own things. And there were some points that I wanted to go, but no. So, but I mean, they grew up together. Thank goodness they're not very much apart in age. They're 2 years at the most apart. So that helped. But still, I mean, so of course, they worry and they take very good care of him, and they have such a patience. But I know that that at some point, I'm not. I don't plan to. I plan to die before them. That's my plan. I hope it happens. Right. So those are the roles that evolve. So at what point did you realize that your role as a sister would extend into adulthood?
I want to say probably like in my teen years, in high school. I think even then I remember talking about my sister because that's some, it's a very common when I make a new friend, tell them, that, oh, I have my sister, blah blah blah. People are always like, oh, well, they want to know. It's funny, the questions that people ask. They always want to know if she has a limited lifespan. And I'm like, she's not ill. She has disabilities, but it's not an illness. So, at least with her, I shouldn't be flippant about that. So, people with disabilities as a whole do have lower lifespans. Um, but for hers, it's not necessarily, it wasn't like when she was born, like, oh, she's going to only live till she's 20 or something like that. Um, but so people want to know that. And then they're like, well, what will happen when your parents are gone? And I was just like, well, I guess it's going to be me. Like, and it wasn't that my parents never said, you are going to take Allison. Like, this is your responsibility, just like you were saying, that they didn't do that either. But it was just, I'm so connected and protective of her that it was almost just a given. I will say, after, like I said, in that sixth grade camp, when I got the hives, I think we all sort of realized that, I was so sort of enmeshed, as they say, with my sister. So I did end up, but I had a lot of freedom growing up. Like, I had time with my friends, I did sports, I was on the high school newspaper. So my parents we grew up with au pairs. So basically, like, a nanny that lived with us, and primarily to take care of my sister, because my parents worked full time. Then my mom was going to law school. So we always had someone, usually a young woman. We had a lot of people from Sweden that sort of helped with her, so that my brother and I weren't the ones that had to be the caretakers. Um, so what was I going to say? I feel like I lost my train of thought.
No, so we were talking about you. Did you realize that that
Oh,
your
yeah.
responsibility extend
So,
into adulthood?
yeah. So I knew that adult, like, as my natural progression, right? As my parents age, eventually, my mom passes away, I will take my sister. But I did, I went away, I went out of state for college. So I lived away for like 4 years. Um, and so that was a really good experience of being, and my parents were never like, well, you have to come back after that. Or, you know, I feel like there was never this obligation imposed on me from the outside. It was just like, this is something I'm committed to doing, which I think helps, because I know there are a lot of siblings out there who are pretty much told by their parents or guilted by their parents, like, this is your sibling, you have to take care of your family. And then these people are like, but I want to have my own family, I want to move, I want to have a career, I want to be able to do all these things, and they feel like their life choices are being taken away.
Yes, that's an important. It's a life choice, and I mean, you have because of such a generous heart, and I'm sure that you became protective of her because um, sometimes, I mean, my son comes up with things that I need to hear exactly in the moment, and I want to say that at some point he becomes like my most important emotional support. I mean, he
Mm.
doesn't know that, but it's like it is this connection that even though I need him, he really brings a lot into the table. So it's that is the part of the family. Sometimes like he puts us together, you know.
Mhm.
So but then comes this legal situation, and then you have to become a co-conservatorship. Can you tell us a
Correct.
little bit about that process?
Yeah, so I became co-conservator for my sister. I'm trying to remember if it was before or right after COVID, because it wasn't that long ago. I'm pretty sure, you know what, it was sort of towards the end of COVID is when I became co-conservator. And part of what made that happen was right before everything shut down with COVID. My mom had been out walking her dog, fell, and broke her femur. So she broke her leg very badly. And she couldn't do anything. She couldn't bathe, like she couldn't take care of herself. She couldn't take care of her house, and she certainly couldn't take care of my sister. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I ended up, and at that point, I wasn't in school. I was teaching my music classes, but I had a pretty flexible schedule. So I was able to basically like move in with them to take care of them. And then COVID happened, which was in a way sort of a blessing because then we didn't have to go anywhere. So it was easier to take care of her. Um, but it was just an eye-opening thing like, oh yeah, like I am going to be, this is going to be my reality more and more frequently in the next few years. Whether it's my mom, one of these times, my mom has since, she actually just fell, I told you, just 3 weeks ago, she fell again. And my mom is not a little frail person. She is like strong as a bull, very active, but she moves very fast and she's always thinking about 10 things. So, yeah, she fell down her stairs and hurt her back. So again, like she's going to be okay. But I'm like, what if one of these times she's not okay? Or what if one of these times it's, I worry about her health, like the stress of being a caregiver for my sister. For my sister just turned 51. So I worry about the stress on my mom. Like, what if she's going to have a heart attack? Like, so there's this reality sort of not far in the future where I'm going to be responsible for taking care of both of them long term, not just for these short little, as my mom recovers from an injury. But so that, knowing that, I'm like, now that I'm co-conservator, if something happens to my mom let's say if she dies suddenly, everything's in place. So I have access to all of my sister's information. I have access to all of her medical records. I can make decisions for her. So that is something, and in the trust, like I'm inheriting my mom's house where my mom and my sister live. So we know that like she'll have a place to live. And so trying to get some of those things in place, not an emergency, I think is really important.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, because I just realized that some people may not know what becoming a conservator is. And you just mentioned that. So I'm going to go back a little bit on what you said, that you grew up with an au pair. Maybe some people are not familiar with that resource. So can you tell us a little bit what an au pair is? Because maybe some people don't know and they're going to be curious, like, whoa, what's that?
Yeah. So I will say this was like in the 80s and 90s, 80s mostly. And I think things are different now with the way the world is working and anyways, I won't get into all the political stuff. But so an au pair typically is a young woman from another country that comes and lives with your family for room and board. Maybe they get a little bit of a stipend, but they're like a live-in nanny, like a nanny housekeeper sort of help. So we have this connection to Sweden. My mom was an exchange student there when she was in high school. So she still has a lot of friends. And so anyways, so it was, these young Swedish girls were like, yes, I want to go to San Diego, California. So they would come and live with us, and and it started, I think I was 10 or 11 when we got our first au pair. So at first they were like my babysitters, and my parents were working, so they would help us, they would help cook. But then as the years went on, eventually I was a teenager, I was driving. So they weren't there to necessarily take care of me. They were there for Allison. And then eventually, I was at college, and then I would come home, and we had Jenny from Sweden, and we're the same age. And then her sister came. So we have like these Swedish sisters. As a side note, I will say though, because we have all of these, they're like family to us. And so my sister has gone to Sweden with my mom, and my mom, my sister, and my daughter, we all went to Sweden together. And it was awesome because all these people know Allison. So like there was one night, it was, where were we? We were going somewhere. I think it was for my mom's birthday, but we were like going out to dinner. And so one of the families was like, Allison can just spend the night with us because they know how to take care of her and we trust them. And so we got to go out for like the whole night. So I wish I had more of them here with me in San Diego to help sort of fill in. Yeah.
It's so wonderful when you have people that are like a extended family in a way, and that you don't have to explain, you don't have to justify the behaviors. They're
Hmm.
just accepting, and it's just so great because you feel so comfortable with people like that, and it's wonderful. So
Hmm.
thank you. That's great. And so now let's move into this aging transition because often we talk about disability just when they're in school, when they're in elementary school, and how we're going to help them become the best people that they can. But Allison is now 50, so she's going through
Yeah.
all her biological natural
Yes.
process herself,
Uh-huh.
and there are milestones. And I very much appreciate the fact that your mother says, my daughter does not need to be institutionalized because she's an important part of the family, because you have made it a point to include her. And I
Hmm.
think that that's very, very important. But things are evolving now. And so, how have you managed, navigating taking care of uh, her, taking care of your family, taking care of Allison as she's getting older? How are you navigating all this, and what supports do you have?
Yeah. So again, going back to that time during COVID where I was really living with my mom and my sister and taking care of both of them, that was very eye-opening because to see how it is such a physical job taking care of my sister, like getting her into the bathtub, having to like help her stand up, getting her dressed, brushing her teeth for her. Like she needs assistance with all of those daily living activities. Um, and so as and then also my mom's aging, right? And like a couple years ago, she had this rare cancer diagnosis. So again, she's doing fine now, but it was like, oh my God, like, what is like, this is really going to happen kind of thing. So what I've done over the last, I'd say 5 or so years is so once COVID ended and things started to go back to normal and my sister was back in her program, I was teaching music classes again. I realized that my mom needed more breaks. And so I 2 times a week, I would spend one afternoon with I would pick her up from her program. She'd come and hang out with me just to give my mom a couple breaks during the week. Um, and then now that I've also, with my husband and my daughter here in our house, I'm like, I want to get our guest room more set up and the bathroom set up more accessible for my sister so that she can come and stay with us maybe one weekend a month, just because my mom needs more breaks. Like, sometimes I worry that her like lifetime allotment of patience, has been like sucked up. Because it is just, when I'm taking care of her right now and my mom's healing, like I know this is still a temporary thing. Whereas with my mom, it was permanent. It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of caregiving. So trying to make more time so that my mom has more time, because that was something else I've talked to my mom about. I'm like, when I take Allison or if I have her for the day and you have all this time, don't go grocery shopping. Don't go to Costco. Like, go have lunch with friends. Go, for a while she was taking this like Japanese floral arranging class, or she sang in a chorus for a little while. So something I've become aware that, as far as when you're trying to balance your life and balance all these things, you need to have time to do the things that feed your soul, whether that's art or music, time with friends, time with nature, whatever that deeper self care is, right? And so I try to take Allison so that Allison and I get time together, but then also so my mom can have time for herself as well.
No, I do want to say that I want to give kudos to your family directly, your husband and your daughters, because I know that it's also, they have to share you. They're sharing you with your parents. They're sharing you, and that is another difficult toll. I know that there's suitors, as you know, they come, and once they see this very interesting person, let's call like that,
Yeah.
they kind of like, yeah, I don't want this environment. So I really want to acknowledge that about your husband,
Hmm.
because that speaks a lot about his generosity and how he allows you to be there. Not that you have to permission, but you don't have to feel guilty about saying,
Hmm.
my sister is part of the family. She may need this, and he's okay with that. That speaks so well of him, and I want to recognize that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, I feel like every time something like this happens where my mom gets, or she had to have knee surgery at one point. She had to have surgery, when things happen with her where all of a sudden she needs someone to take care of her and Allison. The minute when she had this bad fall the other day, I mean, I don't even think we were at the emergency room yet, and she was already apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did this. I'm going to take you away from your family. And I'm like, it's not like that's what I do, and I can't, I'm like, and if, like you said, if my husband was begrudging that, if he was jealous of my sister or that I needed to, spend time, I mean, it was an accident, like like we have to, my mom cannot function. We need to help her. If there was some sort of resistance to that, then we probably wouldn't still be married. Like that wouldn't be that would be unacceptable to me. Um, and I will say this time around is the first time I've enlisted both my daughter and my husband to actually go and help. Like, can you pick Allison up from her program? Um, so trying to get more comfortable, like, okay, I need to. It's funny because I'll tell my mom, like, you need to get more help, you need to get more help. And now I'm like, oh, oh,
Are you
okay,
talking?
need to.
Are you dancing the dance and
Yeah, also I'm like, oh, okay, I need to. And luckily, like I've lived here in San Diego since I was a kid, and I still have a lot of really good friends, like from junior high and high school, that know my sister. Same with a lot of other, I have a lot of friends here that I've known for 20, 30, 40 years that know my sister, know she's an integral part of my family and my life. And I've just been thinking in these last 2 weeks where I'm like, okay, so my mom fell again. She's getting, what is this going to look like? Let's say in 10 years. My mom, hopefully she'll be here, but who knows? And who knows what sort of capacity she'll have for caregiving. And what if, like, my husband and I want to go out to dinner? If we want to go do something, that I need to start building my circle of support, not just in people that will, like, you know, they'll they'll help make meals for us or something like that. I'm like, I need to find people that are willing to learn how to, like, the system we use when we brush my sister's teeth, how to help her in the bathroom, how to give her a bath, like, so that maybe there's someone that we can, if we had a few people like that to sort of help take care of her, if we did want to go away for a weekend in the future, that there's people that we know and trust that can do that. Because obviously there's respite care, which I think most people in the world of IDD know that, through regional center, you get a certain number of hours where the family can get respite care. So someone will come in, take care of the individual with disabilities so that they can go do something, which is great, but it's hard to find those people. And it's hard, I think, and especially for someone like my sister who is so vulnerable because, you know, I always like, if there was a person with bad intentions, my sister would not be able to defend herself in any way. So there's that constant, when you talk about what it's like to grow up with someone with disabilities, with my sister, that has been a thought in the back of my head. I mean, my entire life is this fear that someone's going to do something bad to her and I won't be able to protect her. Um, So, yeah, the idea of building my own community of support is something that's becoming much more pressing right now. Luckily, I'm one of the youngest people in my circle of friends. Um, so while I'm in grad school about to start this new career as a social worker, they're all talking about retiring. And I'm like, they might have a little extra time. Maybe they can help me every once in a while.
But I think that's great. And then I mean, recently, personally, I had an episode that they had to check about my heart, and
Mm-hmm.
how things were, and you just realize, about your mortality, that that anything can happen to you, which is
Mm-hmm.
okay as long as
Yeah.
the people, that what are you doing about it? And just kind of made me. I mean, everything is okay, thank goodness. But for some point, I was worried about it. Like, so it's a big awakening moment that you realize that as much as you want to do it, you shouldn't be doing it by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because physically we only can do so much, but also emotionally, it's very
Yeah.
think having all this, what if, and what if this, and what if that, what if you take care of what is in your hands, and
Mm-hmm.
then, and see all that, because it's very, very hard, and thank goodness that we have these reports, and but not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has access to those things, and
Right.
having this support system, not taken for granted that
Mm-hmm.
someone will come, but they need training, they need to, like, for instance, my son, he does a lot of echolalia, which is
Oh, okay.
part of autism. And
Mm-hmm.
echolalia means that they just take the communication, and they
Mm-hmm.
take bits of certain programs. So I have to watch every movie that he watches, so I know what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But then someone may come and they can take offense of whatever he's saying.
Uh,
So I gotta educate them, and then
mm-hmm.
but that's how he vents. He just decides to talk about this particular movie. So I have to be very aware of whatever he's watching, so that he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't watch anything that can be
Yeah.
offensive, because he
Yeah.
memorized it and he's going to repeat it.
Right.
So all
Yeah.
those things, and he can just maybe jump in, and I was reading for, can you stop blinking? Well,
Mm-hmm.
just as we cannot stop blinking, sometimes they also need to jump and be able to do that, but
Yeah.
people need to be
Mm-hmm.
educated on it and not take offense. So
Mm-hmm.
that is such an important part, and I'm so glad that today we're more open. But when you realize your own mortality, which everybody should, I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
mother, I was very open. I mean, she
Mm-hmm.
always had, we used to like a blessed sheet, and she always
Mm.
had one. People were always borrowing, and she would have another one,
Uh-huh.
but she was like always prepared. So it's part of my own upbringing that
Uh-huh.
we're not here for forever,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you just don't want to think about it. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that you realizing that maybe you will need time for your family, because it's very important also that even though your husband is very understanding, you also know that you have to balance your
Mm-hmm.
family, your sister, and that having that balance is very, very difficult for most of us. So
Yeah.
congratulations there.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned something earlier about resources and being able to have sort of resources of support. And that's something I do want to talk about a little bit because my family, like I said, my mom was an attorney. My father was a financial planner. We lived in like a nice neighborhood in San Diego. We weren't wealthy, but we had resources. And not that, and money can't cure a disability, but it does, the fact that we are a white family, that everybody has, college degrees, they speak English, they're American citizens. So we have all of these privileges that I don't want to dismiss because I think that that is something that made our, like the ability to have an au pair, that is not something that everybody gets access to. Um, And that allowed, because we could pay someone to be an au pair, then my mom was able to work as an attorney, which allowed her to then retire early and have her home. And, so one of the reasons I went into social work is that, I was thinking of becoming a nurse. I wanted something with like hands. I'm very interested in the world of caregiving. Um, and so that's sort of where a lot of people, I'm not going to be a social worker where I'm a therapist or working in child welfare. I want to work on systems and policies that support family caregivers, whether it's, you know, adult children taking care of their aging parents, siblings taking care of siblings with disabilities, parents taking care of children, whether they're typical or have disabilities. There's so much caregiving that all of us do at some point in our lives. And I wish that that was one of the lessons from COVID that had stuck. I think so many people realized once their kids weren't in school, once they couldn't send their kids to daycare, once they're like for my sister couldn't go to her day program anymore. All of a sudden, you realize there's this entire network of people that provide care to people that need it, and how important they are to our society. And then all of a sudden, we kind of forgot about all that. um, but anyway, so that's sort of my passion in terms of working with in the world of social work, is to make the people that need care able to get the care that they need and deserve, as well as being able to be, integrated into our society, but also making sure that the people that provide the care, the nursing assistants, the job coaches, the home health aides, the direct support professionals that are typically these very low paid, not very well respected positions, get more money and get more respect, because they play a critical role in caring for our families when we can't do it all. So, yeah,
Yeah.
resources, because not
I
everyone
mean,
has the same amount.
thank you. You just went into the next question. I'm glad you took that part because, I mean, you seem to have it all together. Ha! But of course, it hasn't been always the case. And I mean, there is this need, once you have overcome all these obstacles, and I'm sure that you tripped in so many of them, and I'm sure you had to bounce on a wall and go to another one, and I'm sure you have had those moments. Um, but what would you like families, to know about planning for service?
Mm. Well, I think for parents, so if for people that are parents of children that have special needs or disabilities, that have siblings, um, like I really admire the way you approach it with your daughters. This idea that like, this is my child, they're your brother, sister, but they're my responsibility. Sort of acknowledging acknowledging the typical children, that they, even though they don't have special needs, they have needs. Um, so and I think that, I think there's a lot of grace that needs to be given to parents of kids with disabilities, because they're just doing their best, and they're often in a situation, no one expects that, right? You don't expect that you're going to have a baby that's going to need all of this extra care, possibly for their entire life. And of course, I had a family friend, her brother, who's literally like a week younger than my sister, at 14 was in a horrible car accident, had a severe brain injury, and so now he has all these needs, whereas they didn't, so that's a whole other trauma to process through. But I think for parents to involve the siblings in their long-term planning, and to do long-term planning, like you said, we as a society don't like to face our mortality or talk about death. People are like, it's morbid, like it's in poor taste to even talk about it, but it can happen any day. Or like I just said, maybe you don't die, but maybe you have a stroke. Maybe you're in a car accident, and it can happen to anybody. any age where they become permanently disabled. So yeah, to just sort of think through the scenarios, um, and to do that planning earlier before it gets, before it's a crisis. Um, I think it's a gift that parents can give to all of their children is to plan for what they want the end of their life to look like, sort of handle the nuts and bolts of things. Because, otherwise, if you lose a parent or a loved one suddenly, and all of a sudden you're now caregiving for someone, you don't even have the space to grieve because you're dealing with all the logistics, which maybe is a nice thing for those first few weeks, but eventually, that's so yeah, that's what I would advise parents is just make sure that you're involving, um, having the hard conversations and realizing that if your son or daughter is like, what, I don't want to be a caregiver for my sibling. In a lot of families, the dynamics between the siblings are not good. You know, um, sometimes there's, who knows, it could be a number of different things, but maybe they're like, I don't feel safe with my sibling. My sibling hits me all the time, and I don't want to bring my sibling into my house where now I have little kids. There could be a lot of different factors into that each individual needs to take into consideration, but it should definitely be, um, if they do decide to be the caregiver for their sibling, it needs to be something that they have come to on their own and haven't been pressured or guilted into, because then that whole relationship will be just built on resentment, which is not healthy.
And you have brought two things very important, and I want to touch on, how you realized it. And, when I spoke to my sisters, because at some point, when you realize, and, there are moments and crises in our lives when you want to like make amends, and I
Mhm.
kind of apologize to my sisters, for having taken that time. One of my sisters said something just so touchy. I'm gonna get emotional here, but
Yeah.
um, I said, I'm sorry. I know that maybe you might have had felt neglected because most of attention was given to me. And she said, you know what? I never felt neglected because my mother always told us that the attention was to that one who needed the most. But I knew and I felt so safe that if ever I needed anything, I would be given as much care as you were giving at that moment.
Mm.
So,
Oh.
so I mean, and just knowing that she actually never, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just remembering the name
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was something that I carried over, it's like, because I knew that I got so much attention and
Yeah.
obviously it wasn't my fault.
Oh.
And, and my other sisters, like, because I am the middle, like I said, there's none of us, but obviously
Mhm.
the ones that were closer. My youngest sister, I always said that she's younger in age, but I am younger in practice because I get the attention of the younger one. But when I told her, I says, no, no, it was. I mean, you were part of us, and my mom never imposed of us, and you were fun. I mean, I felt protected, and you protected me. So I protected when you needed protection, but you always protected me when I needed protection. And just knowing that you were there was comforting.
Yeah.
I was like, really? You knew that I would protect it? Yes, I knew that. I was like,
Mhm.
huh.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, for me, learning that from my sisters, I mean, thank goodness I still at some point, we still support each other. There's such a bond between us. We call ourselves like the three little butterflies that always fly
Oh.
together
Mhm.
because we support each other and I think that maybe if I hadn't had that situation, we would not have grown so much together
Mhm.
and even with my other siblings, I have more connection personally, I feel, because at some point I always needed them and they always knew that I could,
Hmm.
they know that they can count on me because I'm just ever so grateful. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that your sister, it's I like the perspective she had on that idea that there's people that might look at their parents and resent them for putting so much attention on the child that needs more support. But I like this shift in perspective of that being a really amazing role model, right? Like this is, and I feel like that is sort of what I learned from watching my mom with my sister. Again, it was never this, she's not paying attention, and I never felt neglected. And both of my dad would take my brother and I out on these like special outings where we'd get to go ride bikes or do something. And there was never, I lived in a family where I never once doubted that my parents loved me and were very proud of me in whatever I did. And so it wasn't, I never felt a lack of attention. Uh, and I think that maybe that's why, when we were talking about how I was saying, like, if my husband ever, was like jealous of my sister, that one, I did have a boyfriend at one point that would get jealous. Like, if we were talking and then my sister was doing something and he's like, you're not paying attention. And I'm like, you're a grown up. Like, get it together. Like, what is like, I was just, no, that's not going to work. Um, but maybe it's because I never felt that lack. I never felt like I wasn't seen. And I think that there is this concept, like there's articles written about this idea of a glass child that is someone who is the sibling of someone that needs a lot of support and attention, and how they can feel very fragile, see-through, like invisible. And that just wasn't my experience. But I know that's a very common one.
so I mean, setting the boundaries and doing this balance, I think that you have touched something very important, that you have taken the role by choice, and I like how you said that parents should not guilt the
Mhm.
siblings. That is like, this is your destiny, so you have to. So I think that that's a very important boundary. What is can you give us an example? Okay, maybe of a difficult moment when you had to set boundaries, maybe, but like that with your boyfriend.
Mhm.
But sometimes people just assume that they can come and they can make things better because they are not there. Were there situations when you just felt that you had to set boundaries for you and your family so that um, you, as a caregiver,
Mhm.
had to just protect yourselves and your family?
Hmm. I'm trying to think. The thing that comes to mind is something that you and I have sort of talked about a little bit offline, is a lot of times when people will say things like, um, oh, God only gives you what you can handle, or God, so there's this sort of religious, um, I remember, and this was at a very young age, that I had someone say to me that my sister was born like this because it was going to teach me a lesson of how to be a compassionate person, or something to that effect. And it was so upsetting to me, because I was like, why would God do this to my sister to teach me a lesson? Like, that doesn't seem fair. So sometimes there are things, we've talked about this before, like, I'm an atheist, but I very much appreciate people's faith, and I respect that, and I think it can be a very beautiful thing that provides people strength and community. So I would never I'm not dismissing it as something that isn't useful, or doesn't provide meaning for people's lives. But for our family, as a family that is not religious, when people sort of impose that that God has a plan. This is part of God's plan. That's the only time where I ever get a little bit like, eh, eh. And for some people, if I know them, you know, I know they're like you. I know your heart. You know, my mother-in-law is a very religious person, and when she, you know, so again, like I don't take offense, but if it's someone that, like, when it's strangers, when I'm out and about with my sister, and people, because people will say things like that,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm like, you don't know me, or like, I'm like, that does not. Even though I think they're trying to provide some sort of comfort, it does not land that way.
Right.
So sometimes I just have to be like that, you know, I don't
Yes.
usually, I'm not going to get into a confrontation with someone about it, but that's, I don't like that.
Yes, and and I always think, what are the intentions? Because I know that, so I have people say like in the fact that my son is overprotected and that I should be more discipline him more. It's like, what do you know? What do
What
you
do you,
know? And then I say, well,
mm-hmm,
he's an angel. I have seen his horns. You haven't,
yeah,
See the little
yeah,
angel with horns.
mm-hmm,
There are moments, and obviously, it's who we are when people are not
mm-hmm,
watching that really, really matters.
mm-hmm,
And because they see some part, but only we know, what's
mm-hmm,
inside and the moments and the struggles that we have had. And but I solely believe that they have a purpose, and
mm-hmm,
but I don't have an open book and a connection of
yeah,
it. Like, could you please give it me exactly, how you want me or why?
yeah,
I say like, why me? Well, why not?
mm-hmm,
And it can happen to anyone. And the
yeah,
most important thing is how you channel that and
mm-hmm,
how you decide. So yes, that's, setting those boundaries is important. And regardless of the intention, say like,
mm-hmm,
sometimes it's not what they say, but how they say it
mm-hmm.
that really is like, is like, okay, thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, it just sort of sometimes crosses a line where you're like,
Right.
or and it doesn't have to be a religious thing. You know, there's other people that, you know, will give feedback on like her behaviors and like, well, have you tried this? Have you done this? You shouldn't do that. And I'm like,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. And
yeah,
like,
hey,
when did a lot of people that give opinions, they're not even parents,
ah,
it's like, okay, well, never mind.
yeah,
All right. So, these messages I think is very, very important, but, and, trying to think what the future holds is not, we don't have this so-called crystal ball and all that. But I think that you touch on something that just being prepared. I know of a family, very difficult, that their daughter is 12 years old and they were in a car accident. Both parents die and they had never taken care of any of the legal
mm,
situations. So they had assets and it became very, very messy, very, very messy. So there's never that like the perfect time is yesterday. We should
mm,
not wait until, what if in expect the best,
mm-hmm,
but prepare for the worst.
yeah, yeah. And again, I think again the preparing and to do the preparation when it's not an emergency and when you're not in crisis, so that then, you know, if let's say someone is dying of cancer or something, you know, if it's like a long-term illness, if you then you get to spend quality time with them at the end instead of worrying about all of the logistics. I mean, there's always going to be logistics. My grandma was like prepared for her death. Like she had her whole like the church service written out. She knew which person from her church she wanted to sing which song and which Bible verses. She like so planned out. But and my mom was the executor of the and all of the siblings got along pretty well. Not but even with things planned out very thoroughly, there's still bumps. So the more you can handle in advance, the better.
Right. 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 Um, so as giving messages to other Heather, and how you, I I think that personally, and I think that you and I share this, is like, I take my energy and my praise from others. I borrow it from others. So I like to help people because they help me as I help them, because they help me realize things that I had never thought of, and or they help me realize things about myself that I had never even considered.
Mhm.
So, but what brings you peace today?
Mm. So, sort of what you were saying, like when I look at my life and all of the things I've done in terms of what kind of jobs I've had, what kind of volunteer work I do, what kind of, this educational path that I'm taking, connection is always at the heart of it. Whether it's in my family music classes, we're connecting through music and laughter and joy. With my puberty seminars, it's all about fostering communication and connection between the mothers and the daughters. Um, so, the work that we do with these families that have youth with IDD and the peer support groups, like, my God, they're amazing. So one of the things that's very important to me is to make time to spend with my friends and the connections that I have. Like I said, I have friends that I've known for I'm 53, so I have long-term friends. And so making sure that I have time with them to talk about the things that are going on in our lives is very important. So that's sort of the social part of it. But then I also, over the last several years, started meditating and studying Buddhism and mindfulness. And that has been amazing, amazing for me. Everyone, there's a lot of tools and things that people can lean on out there. And that was just one that really has worked well for me. It has, the amount of patience that I have. I feel like a lot of the anxiety I still have anxiety, but it's so much more manageable because I just have this, this belief that, things are constantly changing. So even if something is incredibly difficult right now, it's not always going to be like this. So knowing that things are going to change and that there's, I can ride these waves of my life. Compassion is a huge part of Buddhism, and helping, understanding, having compassion for having compassion for my sister, having compassion for my mom when she's, feeling impatient, having compassion for myself when I'm feeling scared or when I'm impatient because my mom's impatient or I'm impatient with my sister, having that compassion has been amazing. Another key concept is this idea of equanimity, which is very closely related to being able to balance things and being able to handle challenges as well as handle things that are really exciting without getting consumed by them. So just, having a little bit of stability um, has been amazing. Like the fact that over these, just 1 year ago, my mom had to have surgery on a lymph node and in her neck, and then it got infected. And so just 1 year ago, I was doing this, caring for her, caring for my sister, really stressed out because it was related to her cancer. So we were worried, has it come back? Grad school, papers, and I imploded. I had a breakdown. I was like, I can't do all of this. So a couple things. One, I started tapping more into being more regular with my meditation practice. And when I got an ADHD diagnosis, so that also has helped sort of shifting. That helped a lot with the self-compassion once I got that. So yeah, I would say those two things, connection with people that I care about and having my sort of self-reflective spiritual aspect of my life.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I just wrote it down here, and I think that you and I are going to have another interview about thriving, surviving, and thriving with
with
and despite of
ADHD.
ADHD. But I want to draw into the words that you said here, three words actually. Um, some people take for granted the word compassion,
Mm,
but I want to make sure that we take it to the level that it needs to be because, nobody needs anybody's sympathy. It's like, please don't feel sorry for me.
yeah, no pity.
Okay. Yeah, no pity. Thank you. The empathy, you can only be empathic because you have been through it. And thank you for trying to understand me, but it's not enough. So
Mm,
compassion, from the Latin, is I am living the passion with you. So I'm compassionate because I comprehend, means I
mm,
understand with you, and I am willing to walk it with you. That's why it's that compassion. So
yeah.
when it's not like, oh yeah, sorry for you, and here is $10. See what you can do about it.
Mm,
No, so the becoming this compassionate person is because of all the, your family and everything. And then, those of us, which we'll have this other interview, and in this moment, I'm already committing you to it.
okay.
Because when I was also diagnosed later in life, and then you realize, wait a minute, so this is me and it's not my fault. Is because I have ADHD. So being practicing mindfulness with ADHD is a very, very difficult challenge. So really, really kudos for
A
that
lot going
because
on.
just learning to be here now for 30 seconds can be a challenge.
Mhm.
So I think that's why you have overcome so much because learning that with your own challenges, of how we focus on life is very, very different. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different, with
Mhm.
this neurodiversity. So
Yeah.
we ourselves have to learn to be understanding, accepting, and being compassionate of ourselves. That is just so cool. So, may I have a
Yeah.
word that we're going to have another interview of how to thrive and survive with ADHD and
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
juggles? Because
I
that is
mean,
going to be an interesting.
certainly, like I said, it's been not even a year since I was diagnosed, so I'm still learning it. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I
but I
think
mean,
there's a
just
lot of other women like us too being diagnosed later in life.
well,
Yeah.
as a parent, I have learned that at least 63 to 65% of parents who have children with disability have another neurodiversity,
Mhm.
most likely ADHD, to
Uh-huh.
say the least. So
Uh,
then, we have to juggle ourselves, and it's, very, very hard. We're gonna have to close this, Heather. I could be talking with you all day long,
I
but
know.
if just to close this, what would you hope families take away from your story?
Hmm. I hope, I think of the phrase a labor of love often. The idea that being a caregiver for someone with profound disabilities is something that should be done with love. Um, but it is work. Like, it is hard work. And I think for people that maybe do not have someone with a disability in their family that aren't aware of this sort of um, all the ramifications of caregiving, that, it has financial impacts, it has health impacts, it has mental health impacts, it has emotional, like it's a lot to carry. And so, I'm constantly, what people can do to help other caregivers, knowing that they could become a caregiver someday or become someone that needs caregiving, is to, vote. for politicians and representatives that support policies that support caregivers. That's a huge one. I would also, one of the other things that I think I've talked to, I have this shirt that I had made that says, "It's okay, ask me about my sister." Because when I'll go, let's say I go to the aquarium or the zoo with my sister, kids are fascinated by her because she's different. So they have a natural curiosity, and it does not offend me when little kids are looking at her, or sometimes they get scared, like, because she makes these sounds that are different. And the parents often, because they, I think, are worried that they're doing something to offend me, or they don't want to be rude, or they just don't know how to handle it. They'll try so hard to make their kid look away. Don't look, don't stare, don't put, like, let's go over here. And while I think, again, the intention is good, the message it sends is that this person is so different and strange and sort of unacceptable that we don't even want to look at them. And then, because if you don't have someone in your family like that, then you don't have that exposure. So there's always this level of, like, fear of these kinds of people because they're different. Whereas if there was more familiarity, then maybe we'd see more people going into special ed, or we'd have more social workers at the regional center. Or, I think that in terms of having very practical changes in our society to support people with disabilities of any age, we need to, like, find ways to get through that stigma.
Very, very powerful message. Very, very powerful, because I think the word stigma is, it hurts all over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different types of stigma. And I have a friend, he's a priest, and he said that any child that is accepted is free to grow.
Mm.
So we don't need to demand of people, just know that it's okay. Sometimes we try so hard to fit in, and we're forced to fit out.
Mm.
And that's where the very delicate balance is. And I think that the purpose, for example, of you, the person said, for the lesson to become compassionate. Well, you have become a beautiful person. I'm thinking that, yes, that your sister has a lot to do with it. I know that
Ooh.
when I think about it, and I like, just to close this, I like to think that we are like, people who knit. I don't know if you knit,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're knitting, you're just doing one at a time. But if one of those little, what do you call them?
Loops.
The little loop, if it falls down, the whole sweater falls apart.
Mm.
So I'm thinking sometimes that my sign is that little loop, and that if
Ah.
if uh, if I don't take care of that, and then there's a part of this knitting sweater
Mm.
that is called system, society. They need to be part of that, and if we let
Yes.
those little things loose, they're just the whole sweater is gonna come apart. Everything,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that we're needing. So I think that we need people like you who
Mm,
have
thank you.
such a compassion, such a passion, and
Mm-hmm.
compassion with such an enthusiasm to make a difference. And on behalf of all the families that you have touched, and you're going to touch now that you still have the energy to go back to school. Wow. and and you still have so much to give. And they said that be careful with a woman who just opens out and says her age, because it means that she's not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
So that's just so wonderful, Heather. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my
Oh,
heart on the difference
yeah.
that you have already made in my life, and for those that are around you. Thank you for touching us with your kindness. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Elvia. I consider you a blessing in my life, and I'm so glad that our paths have crossed. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. You do some amazing work as well. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. We do what we can. And so we're going to have you back, though.
Okay. We'll talk
Thank you.
all about the ADHD. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we hope that you enjoyed this content. And if you did, please remember to share. Visit us on our webpage. We have very interesting courses that are especially aimed for overwhelmed parents as we go with this journey. Please remember to subscribe if you're not. Love to have you here as part of the Unoverwhelmed family. And please remember, you're not alone. God loves you. And see you in the next video. Thank you.